everyone, welcome back to Stow's Great War Aerodrome. As usual, a little video to keep you interested. I thought it might be nice to have a look at some of the collection again, and on this occasion we're going to look at something you all know. We're going to look at some hats. First things first, over here we've got a German officer's peaked cap, made in lovely rich wool. It's blue and red. You can see it's got a really thick red headband here with the black visor. Designed to give height and therefore imposing authority when giving instructions to the lower orders. Interesting from my point of view, this one, lovely piece. It's one of our own collection. This was made in München by Mr. Schimmerman, and where we would expect to see a cap badge denoting the regiment or the attachment of the officer. Here, as is with all the German headgear, just the stud denoting the Imperial Army. Interesting piece, interesting piece. That's the Germans. Let's come closer to home, shall we? This is a fantastic thing. Known colloquially as a chip bag hat, because back in the day, chips were served in paper like that, not like the polystyrene trays you get now. And worn on the side of the head like that. What we have here is the enlisted or officer's service cap, side cap. This was introduced in 1912. And you can see, as I said, we've got the RFC cap badge there. This one is a brass one, along with brass buttons. If it was an officer's one, that would be bronze. Interesting thing about this one now known as the forage cap and still used in some form today by our own RAF, but also by a number of other forces around the world. I don't know about the other forces, but if you look, really interesting piece here. If you look on the side, you can see this cutaway section that leads to these two buttons. And you can just see behind it a kind of tongue sticking up. That is actually a very functional item. It's not just decoration. If you unhook the sides, you can actually pull the flaps down over your ears and below the back of your neck, just the upper part of the neck. And this will secure under the chin. That peak, that tongue will then become a peak. Now, speaking of somebody who spends quite a lot of his time on a rather windy aerodrome, I can say that any member of the enlisted ranks working on an aircraft or working on the aerodrome, or just generally being on guard, whatever, would have absolutely loved that, because it really would have kept them nice and warm. And being of a heavy wool, it would have been a really, really fitting thing to have in the wilds of winter, or indeed on the Western Front. This is a reproduction, this one, so I can be a little more free with that. Let's move on. We've done the enlisted. Let's move on to the officers, shall we? This is a fascinating piece. We like this. Yet another one from our collection. This is the officer's service cap, peaked cap. And this is very interesting because even though it's khaki, it's the Royal Air Force. It's not the Royal Flying Corps. You can see we've got the very first Royal Air Force cap badge there with the eagle and the crown and the two laurels either side. This particular cap, you can see it's got two gold or brass, as it happens, bars either side, and that denotes this to being the cap of a second lieutenant. It was made in Savile Row by Geeves and Hawkes. And interesting, a lot of people don't realise this, that officers were always expected to purchase their own clothing, uniform clothing. So they would have had to pay for all of their uniform, their caps, their belts, everything out of their own pocket. This obviously meant that there was a drawer on the pocket, but it also meant that because of that, there was a slight personal touches that could be affected within reason. And that, coupled with the personal favouritism of officers on certain dress, meant that even when the first RAF uniforms were being issued, there was still a lot of Royal Flying Corps and Royal Naval Air Service uniforms around. So there was quite a mishmash. And photographs of the first year of the Royal Air Force do show a real collage of different uniforms. The most famous one is that while this was issued in khaki at the time, there was also another colour that was issued, a pale grey blue, not dissimilar actually to the colour of the gloves I'm wearing. And this was remarkably unpopular. It was issued at the same time, and it was very quickly replaced. Within a couple of years, it had been replaced by the famous Royal Air Force blue that we're used to now. Now, there is an interesting story behind that as well, because most of you may have heard a story about how the RAF got their uniform colour. And I'm not going to bore you with it too much, but essentially, so the story goes, there was a huge order placed by a Russian Tsar or noble for a great number of grey-blue uniforms for his cavalry in Russia. Unfortunately, the Russian Revolution in 1917 put pay to that, and they were never collected. So this tailor was left with vast amounts of blue-grey cloth and no customer, until the RAF comes along and says, "Oh, we'll have that." And that's where the issue of clothing uniform came from, that colour. The thing is, we're not quite sure whether it was the first blue-grey, the unpopular colour, or the more recent blue up until around from about 1919, 1920 onwards. Interesting, one day we'll find out, I'm sure, but at the moment, I don't know. If you do know, then please do let me know. Either way, fantastic piece there, lovely piece. Last, the most interesting one of the little show we've got here. Yes, it is what it looks like. It's a Pith helmet. The Royal Flying Corps, as you can see, Royal Flying Corps, not Royal Air Force, so this is up until April 1918. The Royal Flying Corps were issued with these for their tropical and eastern deployments. This one was made by a tailor who, although the tailor was based in Baghdad, this tailor, Mr. Shalluri, was actually made this in India. Red silk lining, made from pith, as the helmet name suggests. One of two helmets that were issued for tropical orders to be used. This was a pith, the other one was a woolsey, and the woolsey helmet extended slightly further back. This one showing as enlisted, as an officer. Enlisted were very popular in putting just trade cap badges, cloth cap badges. You can see it's slightly stained and marked, which means it's obviously been used. But either way, an incredibly light way to keep the sun off. It had been worn with shorts and lightweight service dress as well, so one wouldn't have expected to be wearing a pith helmet and still be wearing the heavy wool that you would wear in the European theatre. Anyway, there we go. A few little interesting pieces from the collection. I hope it's been fun for you. I know it's been fun for me. So if you like it, let me know. And if you want to see more, do get in touch. Thanks very much.